Okay, I'll just make a start then and give you an overview of what I'll be talking about today. My name is Graham Coleman, and I'm an accessibility consultant for the Paciello Group. And I'm delighted to be talking to you today about the Web Accessibility Toolbar, which is a resource that we provide to help both developers of websites and fellow accessibility consultants to test and evaluate websites for accessibility, to see some of the issues that might arise when you use when you're developing a website, and to get a very sort of basic idea of where potential issues might be arising. So what I'm going to give a live demonstration, and I will be, showing off some of the features. There are there are slides to go with this presentation, but I'm not actually going to put them up just now because of issues with lag and switching between the slideshow and the website itself. I'll make these slides available after the end of the session so that you can take them away and use them as almost a tutorial or a manual, if you like, for the Web Accessibility Toolbar, in case you would like to use it in the future. So in today's session, what I'm going to show you is how to use the Web Accessibility Toolbar to test for images on your website, and I will show you how to do navigation, show you how to test for things like structure, for headings, lists, and so on, for forms to make sure that they're marked up accessibly, and also for color as well. So with that, I shall just get straight onto it. So what is the Web Accessibility Toolbar? Well, essentially it's an add-on or a plugin for Internet Explorer that allows you to manually examine web pages for potential accessibility issues, or if you're an accessibility consultant and you want to get a quick overview of how a website is constructed, you can use this toolbar as well. And what the Web Accessibility Toolbar does is it identifies how components on a web page are marked up. It enables you to see different views of page content, so you can see it, your page with CSS, you can see it without CSS, also see it with cascading style sheets. You can also see it in different color modes, so you can get an idea of how people different visual impairments might see your website, and so on. And also facilitates the use of third-party online applications. So rather than going through multiple URLs to find things and to copy and paste your source code into, let's say, the web accessibility, the W3C validation tool, there's a quick link within the Web Accessibility Toolbar to actually go ahead and check it from the toolbar rather to go through multiple windows. So that can be a bit of a time saver from that respect. So where you can actually get the toolbar is from our website, which I'll just put up on the screen just now. So that's at paciellogroup.com/resources/WAT for the Web Accessibility Toolbar, and you can download it from there. And recommended system requirements, essentially, it's the current build of it, which I can't take credit for. It was developed by some colleagues here at Paciello Group. It's built for Windows Vista, Windows 7 and Windows 8, and running on Internet Explorer 9 and above, and that's the recommended system requirements. There are some older versions online, some legacy versions that you can also download from there, which are, if you're still using XP or need to test on XP with, let's say, Internet Explorer 8, you can download the older version of the toolbar and use that. One thing to bear in mind, just as a kind of cautionary tale if you're installing this, is if you do have a previous version of the Web Accessibility Toolbar installed, make sure you uninstall it from the add and remove programs in Windows option, where you generally add and remove programs from Windows. You do the same to uninstall the Web Accessibility Toolbar as well, just to make sure that all the older versions are removed and there's no problems or with configuration, for example, with the new version. So just to be on the safe side, make sure that the older version is uninstalled before you install the newer version. So in terms of a brief overview, I'm going to go back to this basic website that I created. Now, hopefully, if there's no lagging, you should see at the top of the screen here. This is the Web Accessibility Toolbar immediately underneath the address bar within Internet Explorer, and that's what shows when the toolbar is installed. And there's many options within the toolbar, that not all of them that I'm going to be able to go through today, but I will demonstrate some of the options and functionality there, so that you can try using some of this functionality either on your own websites or on client websites, or if you're developing websites, then you can try using this tool. It's obviously, there are other tools obviously that you can use for browsers such as Firefox, such as the Web Developer Toolbar, and some other similar tools. So that in a sense, this isn't necessarily a competitor, but it's another tool for your arsenal. It's something there that you can use as well within Internet Explorer. So moving on to some of the things you can do. As I say, I've developed this basic website here, this one-page website. So hopefully, if I scroll down, there won't be too much lag. But I've put in a little bit of text here, a few images that I've picked up. That's me there in the bobble hat, in case you're wondering, and a few bits and pieces of other bits of text, links, a table, and a form, and a footer at the bottom. So the average type of content that you might see on a reasonably static website. So this is what I'll use for the demo just now. And as I say, I'm going to talk through using the Web Accessibility Toolbar for 5 specific issues, and that's checking for images, so make sure things have got alternative text, and so on. I also talk about navigation, so things like making sure there's proper page titles and skip to content links and so on. Structure, so headings, lists and so on, forms, and color. So hopefully most of this should come through during the presentation, and obviously, any questions, please ask me them towards the end of the presentation. I'll try and do my best to answer. So the first thing to look at is images, and obviously in web accessibility, the type of things that we're looking for are things like, do images have appropriate alternative text? And obviously you can use tools such as a web inspector to go through each of the the markup and check that there's an alt attribute there, and it's appropriate alternative text has been provided. But sometimes that can be quite difficult, because there can be a lot of HTML on a page, and narrowing it down to trying to find a specific image can be quite tricky and time consuming. So one of the things that you can do with the Web Accessibility Toolbar is that we've got this images drop-down menu within the toolbar itself. And there's essentially three options that you can use here. Now, just opening the menu here, we've got this idea of listing the images, which is the very first option. You can, and what that will do, and I'll show you this in a second, is to display a page summarizing all the images on the page. You can also show the images, which will display the alternative text next to the image, and will warn you if an image doesn't have alternative text. And you can also remove images as well. So if you've got any images on a page, it will remove them and replace the images with the alt attribute if it's there. And if the alt attribute isn't there, then normally either nothing will display or the image will just stay where it is. So you can start to see problems of where where alt text hasn't been applied. So looking at list images, I shall just click on this option here, and this will open up a page hopefully. So I'll leave that to load just for the lag time. This page will just demonstrate some of the images that I've got on the website here. So if I scroll down to this first image, that's the image here. It tells me the width of the image. It's given me a lot of metadata here, such as the width, the height, but importantly, it's also giving me the alt text details. It's giving me the markup for this image. If I scroll down slightly more, I've got an image here without alternative text, so it's showing me that there's no alternative text in there. It's not actually, well, it's not actually indicating within this list images option, but this is quite a good page to use if you want to take a printout or something and want to use it like a kind of tick box exercise of just making sure that you go through all the images on a page and just tick everything off to make sure that it's looking okay. So this is where this page comes in quite useful. So I'm just going to close that. The other option is to, if I scroll down slightly, hopefully not too much lag time here, but if I go to images and show images, you will see once the screen loads is that the alt attribute is actually displayed. The Web Accessibility Toolbar will display the alt attribute for the image, so you can actually see what the alt attribute is, whether the alternative text is appropriate alternative text, and also if I scroll down slightly, in this particular example here that didn't have any alternative text, it actually identifies that there is no alternative text there, so you can go back and fix that, or you can let the client know that there's no alternative text for that particular image, and it needs to be fixed if it's not something you're developing yourself. And so I'll just refresh the page. And the other option that I talked about was removing the images as well. But hopefully you get the idea in terms of images. There's also an option here. I haven't actually implemented on this site, but there's also an option to CSS images. So if you have, if you're using background images, you can remove background images from the page, and that will really be useful for if you're using CSS images for functional purposes to convey particular information. you know, it'll show you how problematic it is if in cases where, you know, background images have been used for that purpose and there might be any alternatives there, or alternative text or whatever. So that can be quite a useful option to look at as well. There's also you know, active images, this option down here, which will show you, you know, how images used for particular functionalities such as image links or image buttons or whatever. You can check the alternative text for that. But that's essentially how you can use the Web Accessibility Toolbar for images. So I'll move swiftly on to navigation. And the types of things that you might be looking for in terms of navigation for accessibility is things like, is there an easy way to bypass blocks of repeated content? So skip to main content links, making sure that users can bypass extensive navigation menus so that they don't have to navigate through the each menu on each page that they encounter. So for example, in this particular example, I have implemented a very basic skip to main content link here at the top. So what I can actually do is, you know, I can either, you know, navigate through the page manually using the tab and the shift tab keys, or what I can do is I can go to the document info option in this the Web Accessibility Toolbar, and if I click on this option and scroll down to skip links and click on that, it will identify where there is a skip link. So it's telling me there's a link here at the top left hand side of the page, and it's telling me where the direction, where the actual anchor element or the ID is located for that particular anchor element. So you can see where the skip link is and where the direction of the skip link is essentially as well. So that's looking at bypassing blocks of content. Another thing that you can use the Web Accessibility Toolbar, you can also use in terms of bypassing blocks, you can also look at landmark roles. So things like ARIA landmark, well, essentially our landmark roles. The Web Accessibility Toolbar will indicate if there are any landmark roles on the page to allow, you know, screen reader users, for example, to navigate to sections of the page directly. And you can do that by, again, going to the document info menu option and scrolling down to, is it the document info? Maybe, no, sorry, it's structure actually. Structure and down to ARIA landmark roles. And if I quickly click on that, oh, the color contrast isn't particularly great here because of the color scheme that I've chosen, but what it's actually doing is it's telling me where I, as a developer, have marked up the banner role, the navigation role for the navigation menu, the main role, and if I very gently scroll down, the footer row or content info as it is for ARIA landmark roles. So I will just refresh the page there. And one other thing, obviously, for navigation is just making sure there's a proper heading structure, but I'll come on to that shortly when I talk about the checking for structure and things like that. So I'll come on to that shortly. But in terms of other aspects of navigation, also looking at making sure that pages have got appropriate titles, so that's pages or frames within pages, if frames are being used, to make sure that they've got appropriate clearly indicate what's, or clearly summarize what's actually on the page. So the way that you can do this is obviously you can look at the your browser's tab window, but sometimes it's nice to get a little bit more of a summary there. So what you can actually do is you can go again to this document info menu, click on that and click on metadata information, and this will create another page which essentially summarizes what's effectively in the head element of your of the page that you're actually looking at. And here it's actually telling me what the title of the page is. So again, it's a nice, quite sort of snappy, quick way of investigating, what the title is of a website, and getting a little bit more information that you might need in there as well. The other thing, the last thing for navigation I would like to talk about is link text. And obviously one of the clear accessibility issues that we'd be thinking about here is link text clear? Is it concise? And does it make sense when conveyed out of context? For example, by JAWS, when you use the JAWS key plus F6, I think is it. No, it's not actually. It might be a different combination. I can't quite remember just now, but it will show you the list of the list of links on the page. It'll bring JAWS can bring that in a particular menu, or in a particular window. Sorry, but what you can do is get a similar sort of presentation within the web accessibility toolbar. Providing a list of links on the page. What you can actually do is you can go to the document info menu and click on, scroll down to list links. And if I click on this, it will list all the links on the page. And on the left hand side here of the table, you've got the link content, and it will give you the link text, and on the right hand side it will indicate where the URL or the direction of the link. And if I scroll down, most of the website, most of the link text there is looking reasonably good so far. I've got alternative text here for the image. But down here, item 10, the 10th link on the page, it's the good old, or the bad old, click here link text. So obviously, you're thinking, well, what's that click here mean? Where does that go? And so on. So that's obviously something that you need to invest in. Sometimes, when you are, if you're doing an audit of a site, or you're just checking the site and you're checking your links, if you've got quite a busy page, it can be quite difficult sometimes to actually problems with links, because there's so much content on the page that it's very difficult to pick the links out visually, and this way is a really useful way of dissecting the links, or abstracting the links away from the page, so that you can check them just without the actual content there, the remainder of the content, and it can perhaps make it a little bit quicker for you to do so. So that's essentially navigation. The third thing I'm going to talk about now is using the web accessibility toolbar for checking this structure of a website. And things that we might be talking about here are making sure that paragraphs of text are marked up, making sure that appropriate lists markup is used for list content, our data tables marked up using the appropriate HTML data table elements, and making sure that table headers are marked up correctly using the appropriate TH element in HTML. And also the obvious one as well is making sure that headings are marked up correctly and are nested appropriately. So we'll go through each of these options just now. Now, to begin with, looking at checking that paragraphs of text are marked up correctly, and what you're looking for here is making sure that the paragraph element is used to mark up plain text or text that's not as part of a list or a heading or a table or whatever. And the way that you do this is if you click on the structure element, the structure menu item here, and if you scroll down to paragraphs, and if I click that, it will outline where there are paragraphs of text on the website, and also put in a little visual indication of the element just to show where there are where paragraphs of text are actually used. I'm scrolling down the page here at the moment, so bear with me if there's any lagging of lagging of the screen. But if I scroll down to why did I make this site, you'll notice here that this sentence to demo the web accessibility toolbar has not been highlighted, because in this particular instance I've just used a div element, or a semantically neutral division element to indicate that this is a piece of text. So strictly speaking, I probably should have used a paragraph element here. So this might be something that needs to be fixed, or you might want to warn the client about just making sure that they use paragraph elements to mark up paragraphs of text, because the web accessibility toolbar hasn't actually indicated that this piece of text here compared to the piece of text above hasn't been marked up using this paragraph element. Similar, if I just scroll up the page here and refresh the page, you can use the same structure menu item to check that content is checklist markup, essentially, to make sure that content that looks like a list is actually marked up as a list, so it's using the correct HTML list elements. And if you go down to the structure and move down to list items, you'll get a similar view of that you did with the paragraph screen, where it will outline items on the page. So if we concentrate on the main navigation menu here, it's showing me that the UL unordered list element has been correctly applied to the navigation menu here, and it's also showing me that the individual list elements, the HTML list elements, are being used to mark up each of the items within the navigation menu. And as you can see, or hopefully as you can see, there is no unclosed elements here. So you know, if there was a problem with the list or whatever, you would see it fairly straight away if you were looking for a quick and snappy view of how lists are marked up. So that can be quite useful as well, just using a visual way of looking at how lists are structured on your site. So that's list markup. Now if I scroll down again at the bottom of the page here, just very slowly do that while I deal with lag. So I've put this very basic table in here that I believe I've marked up correctly. So obviously, when one of the obvious issues with data table markup is that sometimes developers might miss things out, like you know, the appropriate heading elements being used for data tables, or you know, things like data tables might be used for layout purposes, where cascading style sheets should be used. So you'll get again, as with the previous examples, you'll get a very visual way of showing you how that table is marked up. And if you see table markup for content that is not a data table, then you will need to investigate the code further to make sure that either to advise the client or to change the markup so that CSS is, or you know, maybe if you're aware that table markup has been used, then looking at the table markup with an inspection tool to make sure that a presentation role has been applied to the table would be, you know, the next stage on from that. So I'm not going to go into that level of granularity, but one thing that you can do here is click on the tables and item here and scroll down to show data tables. And what this will do is it will show you the actual table-based markup here. So on the left-hand side of the page here, just underneath the "Where I've Been" heading, it's showing me that a table has started. It's showing me recent trips in the UK and abroad. It's captioned correctly. It's showing me where the table header element used and where data cells are there, and so on. So this kind of very quick view of how, you know, a table's marked up. And obviously, if you do a lot of development of tables, you know that sometimes when you look at the HTML source, it can be quite, you know, there's a lot of content, there's a lot of structure, and there's a lot going on that's very difficult to follow when you're just looking at the source. And sometimes having this this kind of visual approach can be really useful, just to see where, you know, where the caption is, how headings have been marked up, and so on. And you know, it can make it a little bit easier for you to investigate where there are particular issues. So in the sense that that's tables. Last thing within structure that I want to talk about is headings. And obviously, one thing that you wanted to check is make sure that appropriate heading elements are being used, so the H1 to H6 elements. Check that heading elements are not being used for presentation purposes. So because headings tend to be a lot bigger than other text by default in the browser, some developers will use heading elements to display important text, or what they feel is important text, rather than using plain, let's say, a paragraph element and styling it so it's larger. They'll prefer to use the heading element, which is incorrect in that particular context. So you can check that sort of thing as well. You can also check that headings are adequately nested, so make sure that the hierarchy is reasonably good. So starting off with a main H1 heading for, let's say, the page summary heading, and, you know, it moves down through the heading structure without skipping particular levels. So there's two options that you can actually use within the toolbar. There's the structure, and both are within the structure menu here. You can either use the heading count option, and what that will do is will give you a visual indication on the page of where headings are. Or actually, probably my favorite option within the Web Accessibility Toolbar is the actual heading structure option here. And what this will do is this will generate it will generate a page similar to the links page that we saw earlier, which it just literally removes all or shows all the headings on the page abstracted away in a separate page. So if I click on this and you will see, hopefully now, that I now have a fairly blank HTML page, which shows the title, but also shows the actual headings on the page, and I can check again. There's an H1 element there. The hierarchy extends that headings make sense as headings and aren't main content, and so on and so on. And so that's basically the headings option here. The second last thing I want to talk about is forms, and what we're looking at here are making sure that form controls such as text boxes or radio buttons or check boxes or whatever, are they programmatically associated with the actual label elements. So in some cases, visually a piece of text can look like it's a label for a checkbox or a text box, but it's not marked up as such within the HTML. And in such cases, a screen reader user, for example, navigating through your page might not hear the actual label when they navigate to that particular form control. For example, when they get to a text box, they might hear simply edit, type in text, but without the actual label text to tell them what they need to do. If you can actually use the web accessibility toolbar to highlight some of how labels are marked up. And again, I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom of the page, and I'll just leave it just for a couple of seconds while it catches up. So I've got a form here, a contact me form at the bottom of the page, which has got a first name and last name, and a field set and a legend in here. And what I can do now is I can use the web accessibility toolbar to make sure that the labels are clear and that they're marked up correctly, and also using the appropriate for and ID attributes to give the programmatic relationship. So to do this, what you can do is if you go to the structure menu and scroll down to field sets and legends, what this will do is visually indicate labels on the page and show how the labels and the form components are programmatically associated through the for and ID attributes. So I'm just going to activate that menu item now, and now what it's done is it's giving me a visual indication of the form. So what I'm looking at here is, here's the first name label here. It's telling me how the label's marked up, and the for attribute has been given a value of first name. The ID attribute for the related form component, text box in this instance, has been given the same attribute value of first name. So that's something that you want to be looking at as well, is to make sure that the for and the ID attribute values match. And also as well, for checking things like groups of controls, such as groups of radio buttons, has the field set and legend elements being used appropriately. And so it's not telling me here, obviously, whether this is right or wrong. That's up to me as a developer to check what's actually being displayed. But again, instead of necessarily going through the markup, which might be embedded somewhere within my HTML and quite difficult to find, this gives me a first glance, a first snapshot of how my form is marked up, and any problems may be visually more apparent very quickly and can be fixed very quickly, rather than trawling through lines and lines of HTML. So the very last thing I'm going to talk about just now is color, and I mentioned that one of my favorite aspects before was the heading feature of the web accessibility toolbar, but this is possibly a competitor for my favorite in terms of one of my favorite aspects of this tool, and this is for checking for color. And built into the web accessibility toolbar is actually another application that we at the PASDL group offer. The color contrast analyzer, which you can actually access from the web accessibility toolbar, but you can also download separately as a separate tool if you want, and I'll come on to that shortly. But the color contrast analyzer, which I'll show you shortly, is essentially a tool that helps you to verify that color is not being used to identify important information on the page or distinguish important information on the page, but also it can be used to check whether appropriate color contrast ratios have been applied. Now I mentioned that you can actually download the application separately. You can download that as well from our website. It's also under the resources menu option. And if you choose the color contrast analyzer, you can download this application separately, but it comes as part of the web accessibility toolbar installation, I believe. So, once you've actually installed the web accessibility toolbar, hopefully the color contrast analyzer should be there as well. But just moving back to my web page. As I say, you can check things for the color contrast or the use of color for information purposes, and so on. So let's first of all look at looking at the use for information purposes. So to access the color contrast application, you activate the color menu item here. And you scroll down to the contrast application, contrast analyzer application menu item. And if I activate that, that should bring up our color contrast analyzer. Now, let's say we want to check to see what the things like colors being used for informational purposes. Well, one thing that you can do is if I go to the image menu here, and then select window list from the options, and then I'm just going to scroll down to the page I have open, which is okay, so you're not seeing the color contrast analyzer, so that might not come up on the presentation actually. Okay, so I'll very briefly talk about what the color contrast analyzer does, and then you can investigate this separately, because I don't think it's going to let me share it now that it's live. But you can use the color contrast analyzer check for color contrast. It's got a color picking tool on there, which instead of if you know the hex values from the CSS file, for example, you can type in the contrast values for the background color and the foreground color, and you will get to see the it will show you whether the contrast is appropriate there. So you can type that in manually, but it's also got a color picker tool. So if you can think of some applications such as Photoshop or some of these applications, where you might have a color picker tool on there. It's got a similar tool within the color contrast analyzer, where you can drop this the picker icon onto your website, and you can pick up the background color of that section of the website and the foreground color, and it will tell you how where the contrast is, so what the contrast is. So, and there's also other features in there, such as checking how the page looks in grayscale, for example, so you can check where colours possibly being used for information purposes. And I'm going to quickly scroll down to the bottom of the page here, where you can see that hopefully underneath this important information heading, I've intentionally put very light grey text on a grey background, which is going to be very difficult for people with particular visual impairments to actually read that text. You can validate whether the contrast between the background and the foreground is appropriate in that context. And if it's not, you can adjust the CSS, the color values in the CSS, so that you either darken the background color or you increase the foreground color in there as well. So until you find an appropriate contrast ratio. So obviously in that case, I couldn't show off the color contrast tool just now, but the notes that will go along with this this slide, this presentation, provides full instructions. So after the session, when all the notes go online, you can check the notes and download the tool and use the tool yourself. So that's essentially color contrast. In terms of wrapping things up, just to confirm again, where you can download the web accessibility toolbar from, you can download it from our website underneath the resources section. That's also where you can download the color contrast analyzer. If you want to read more about the web accessibility toolbar, we've provided a blog post within the PASIL Group's blog site, which is blog.pasilgroup.com. So that gives a little bit more context as to what the web accessibility toolbar does and some of the new features that are in there. And also things like, for the color contrast analyzer, which I didn't get a chance to talk to you about just now, but just checking what some of the functionality within the contrast analyzer is and what some of it means. We've provided a blog post as well to suggest if you don't understand what's being presented there from the results from the contrast analyzer, this blog post should hopefully help you understand what the results mean and why information that's presented by the contrast analyzer is important. And essentially, with 10 minutes for questions, that's all I wanted to talk about this morning. So thank you very much again for your time. And I'm happy to take questions at this stage as well. Oops. Okay. Okay, just having a look through the comments, and yes, the web accessibility toolbar is for Internet Explorer only. There's also alternative tools for for Firefox, for instance. I use the Web Developer toolbar regularly. It's got similar sort of features to the the web accessibility toolbar, but obviously it's for Firefox and I think Chrome as well. I might be wrong with that, but I generally use it for Firefox, and it's very good. You get similar sort of feedback as well. And obviously, you know, this isn't the only tool that I use when doing audits. You know, I still use things like Firebug and web inspection tools, and you know, even things like the WebAIM Wave toolbar. These are all quite useful, and they all give you different sorts of feedback or information. So you know, it's not essentially use one or the other. I definitely say the more the merrier in that side of things. So, you know, it's essentially, you know, find a tool that you're comfortable with, but, you know, try and, you know, use different tools where you can. Okay, so one of the questions that's come in here is, does the toolbar test page by page, or can it be used to test the entire site? I've never actually used it to test the entire site. I tend to, when you take a view of, let's say, for example, images, it will show you the images on that particular page. So you know, it'll give you a snapshot of the current page that you're looking at, in terms of, you know, as alternative text is it provided for all images on that page. So I think it's more for a kind of page by page view rather than the site as a whole. You could, but what you can do is you can check things like, you know, link text on a particular page to make sure that the link text to another page is appropriate or makes sense, and start doing things for, you know, you can take a you know, printouts or whatever of the link text on each page, and you can make sure that they're consistently used across each page as well. So so that's essentially you know, it's more of a page by page rather than necessarily an entire website view.